Thank you, Secretary General, for your very detailed review of the challenges the whole international community is facing today. And you also briefly provided the concrete steps which was taken by the alliance with the aim to overcome these challenges. Let me raise my first question, and then I promise to limit myself to give more opportunities to Georgian students. Secretary General, as you mentioned, since the collapse of the Soviet Union and since the end of the Cold War, many steps were taken and many agreements were achieved on international arena, but concrete facts of drawing dividing lines in Europe and concrete efforts aimed at reasserting spheres of privilege interests in the region unfortunately still seriously challenge the strategic agenda of the West to achieve Europe whole, free, and at peace. My question is, how do you think, where do we stand in these regards, and how do you also see the role of international institutions, and of course, more specifically, how do you see the role of NATO?
I think that what we have seen is that we have made a lot of progress. We have seen that there is more democracy in Europe now than it has been for ever before. There are more independent democratic states than we have seen ever before. And we have seen the crucial role of both NATO and the European Union. So after the end of the Cold War, after the end of the Soviet Union, after the end of the Warsaw Pact, we have seen more democracy, more independence in Europe than we have seen ever before. And this has been great progress, and NATO has been, of course, been key in that process with the enlargement, taking in many more members, and by that also contributing to stability, to democracy, and to freedom in Europe. So in one way, we are really on the right track to a Europe whole, free, and at peace. But at the same time, we see challenges, like we, for instance, have seen in Georgia, with the occupation of territories in Georgia, with the Russian aggression against Georgia, and of course what we have seen in Ukraine. So the picture is mixed, and we also see that Russia is trying to kind of re-establish spheres of influence along its borders. And for me, this just underlines the importance of strong NATO, of strong partnership with other countries in Europe that are not members of NATO, and also the importance of underlining that every nation has the freedom to choose its own path, including what kind of security arrangements it wants to be part of. So we are moving in the right direction, but we have seen some very disappointing development, especially in Ukraine in the last couple of years.
Thank you, Secretary General. Now we have time for questions, around 30 minutes, and I would ask everybody to identify yourself and, of course, to keep your questions short in order to have more time for conversation. Please, lady there. Yeah.
Ani Khachidze, Caucasus University. My question is, what would be your message to the part of our society pessimistic about Georgia's NATO accession? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't. The message to
the Georgian society, to the part of society
who
is pessimistic.
Society,
okay, yeah, I understand.
Yes, thank you.
Well, my message is that Georgia should continue to do exactly what Georgia is doing, and that is to implement reforms. Constitutional reforms, electoral reforms, economic reforms, judicial reforms, modernize Georgia. There are many reasons why I believe that this is so important for Georgia. Of course, it enables Georgia to move towards membership because these reforms are critical for Georgia being able joining NATO. But in addition, those reforms are important regardless of NATO, because to have an independent judiciary, to have strong democratic institutions, to have freedom of press, to have the rule of law, to fight corruption. That is something which is important regardless of NATO. So even if NATO hadn't asked you to do it, you should have done it anyway, because it creates freedom, it creates the best possible framework for investments, for economic prosperity. So there are double reasons for you to pursue the path of reform, modernizing the Georgian society, because it provides freedom, it provides economic growth, and it is the way towards NATO membership. Then it will take time, and you need patience. But you achieve a lot while you are moving. It's not either nothing or full membership. You have already achieved a lot when it comes to modernizing the Georgian society, and you have achieved a lot when it comes to building partnership with NATO. There are NATO advisors in Georgia. We are training your troops. We are increasing the ability of Georgian troops to work together with NATO troops. Interoperability, we call it in the NATO language. We have the NATO training center. We are opening the school, defense institution building school. We have the NATO liaison office. We have advisors and so on. So I think, yes, I understand that you would like to see membership as soon as possible. I understand that you would like to see that I can give you an exact date that you will join next year. I'm not able to do that, but I can tell you that you are achieving a lot just by working towards membership, because on that road you are modernizing Georgia, and that's good for Georgia regardless of when you are able to join NATO.
Thank you, Secretary General. And we have next question over there.
Hello, I'm Sophia from Stockholm State University. First of all, let me extend my appreciation for NATO for its support of Georgia's territorial integrity and for pursuing the non-recognition policy. So my question is that in the environment where the modern Euro-Atlantic security architecture, including the principles of inviolability of state borders is being constantly undermined. What's the vision of NATO on how to deal with this challenge? Thank you.
How to deal with challenges that the borders are violated?
Well, it is a fundamental principle which the security order in Europe has been based on since the end of the Second World War, that borders should be respected, the territorial integrity, the sovereignty of all nations should be respected, and that has been the basis for peace in Europe. And the reason why we are so concerned by what we have seen in Georgia with the occupation of some regions in Georgia, and also by what we have seen in Crimea and eastern Ukraine, is that that's violating exactly those fundamental principles. And that is serious for Georgia, it's serious for Ukraine, but it's also serious for the whole of rest of Europe, because it undermines the principles, the framework which peace and stability in Europe has to be based on. And that is also the reason why NATO has reacted so strongly. And not only NATO, but the whole Europe and NATO together. The European Union has implemented strong economic sanctions against Russia because they have violated the territorial integrity of Ukraine. And NATO has implemented the biggest reinforcement of our collective defense. And we have, as I stated in my speech, decided to also deploy forces the forces in the eastern part of the alliance. So, credible deterrence, strong defense, to underline that NATO will never accept that any NATO ally is is attacked or that the territorial integrity of any NATO ally is violated is at least part of a response to what we have seen in Georgia and Ukraine. On top of that, of course, we are also then stepping up our support, our cooperation with both Ukraine and Georgia, also as a response to what we have seen of a more assertive Russian behavior in Europe during the last years.
I cannot agree with you more, Secretary General, because if we can speak about new realities in international relations, the most clear reality in current era is the indivisibility of security. It's really hard to achieve security on NATO territory without projecting stability and security in the region, and it is really very important that concrete steps are being taken with the aim to strengthen the security of the partner and aspirant countries as well. Thank you for this answer. And one more question over there. So.
Thank you. Teya Gergereva from Tbilisi State University. Well, the opinion polls show that majority of Georgia's population supports our country's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. However, the anti-Western propaganda efforts by Russian Federation are increasing not only in Georgia but also in other partner countries. NATO has taken certain steps to mitigate this challenge. Georgia also, on its own, has taken certain action by strengthening its strategic communication with NATO. What do you think would be the most efficient format of cooperation between Georgia and NATO to further mitigate this challenge? Thank you.
I understand the concern you have about Russian propaganda, and we have seen that in several countries, including in Georgia. At the same time, I think it's very important for me to underline that for NATO, it is not an option to meet propaganda with propaganda, because we actually don't believe in propaganda. We believe that the people are, able to distinguish propaganda from facts and information. So for us, the best possible response to propaganda is the truth. It's facts and figures and documentation. So what NATO can do is to help you provide the facts and the truth, because we believe that in the long run, the truth will prevail over propaganda. Let me also add that, of course, NATO and all the people and all of us at the NATO headquarters in Brussels, we can do a lot. But in the long run, it has to be the people in each and every member state or partner state like Georgia that has to stand up and to counter propaganda in each and every country. Because I trust myself a lot, but I really believe that there are Georgians who are the best ones to counter propaganda in Georgia, not me. And it has to be done by you in this country. What we can do is to help you with the facts, with the figures, with the analysis, but you have to stand there in the open, free debate. And that's also the reason why it is so important to have a free press, is that in the long run, if you have a free press with different views, a variety of opinions, that's also the best way to counter propaganda and not to be vulnerable to propaganda. So we will help you, but you have to do the job.
Exactly. I completely share your vision on our domestic homework in this respect, and it's really important that domestically we should achieve the consolidation of our efforts to the fullest possible extent in order to counter very well organized propaganda against Georgia. We have one more question, the military guy there. He's a student from Defense Academy, I guess.
Ajara Region, Batum State Maritime Academy, Basic Trikwadze. And my question, according to the issue of Black Sea region security enhancement on NATO Workshop Summit, what kind of contribution can Georgia make as a country having strategic functions in this region? Thank you.
I have problems with hearing the questions.
This time me too as well. So you mean the strategic function of Georgia? Yeah, what is the strategic function of Georgia in preserving peace in the Black Sea area? So.
I think that the strategic function of Georgia is to create a strong, modern, vibrant, democratic Georgian society. Because then you reduce your vulnerability from outside pressure. And you are doing exactly that. Societies that are strong, that are democratic, that have some core values uniting them, are much stronger than countries which are, characterized by corruption, by weak institutions, by deep divisions, and so on. So, again, the more you're able to modernize Georgia, the more you're able to create a really true, open, democratic society, the stronger and more resilient you will be also from outside or against outside pressure, and the more you will contribute to stability in this region. Of course, strong defense, strong security institution will be part of that, and that's also the reason why I welcome so much the way you are reforming and modernizing your armed forces and your security institutions. You have made impressive progress and thereby also contributed to stability in this region, but to be a modern society is not something you achieve and then relax. You have to always continue to reform and modernize in a changing world.
Thank you. Next question over there. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Diana Khomeriki from International Black Sea University. My question is about terrorism. After G20 summit, President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that official Washington and Ankara will cooperate to clean Raqqa, the capital of so-called Islamic State, from terrorists. So what is the position of NATO concerning this issue, and in general, what is the current vision of NATO regarding combating terrorism? Thank you.
To combat terrorism is a huge task where we need the contribution from many different countries and from many different international institutions and organizations. It's about police work, it's about intelligence, it's about a lot of civilian measures, for instance, countering the threats coming from returning foreign fighters. But NATO also has a key role to play in the fight against terrorism. And I think we have to remember that our biggest military operation ever, our operation in Afghanistan, where Georgia has really contributed, that is an operation which is about fighting terrorism. The reason why we went into Afghanistan was a direct response to the terrorist attack 9/11/2001. And the reason why we stay in Afghanistan is to prevent Afghanistan becoming a safe haven for international terrorists. So NATO plays a key role in fighting terrorism by conducting our military operation, the train, assist and advise presence in Afghanistan. Then NATO also provides support to the international coalition, US-led international coalition against ISIL. We provide support in different ways. We will start to train we train Iraqi officers in Jordan. We will start to train more Iraqi officers in Iraq soon. And we will also provide AWACS surveillance plane assistance from them to help the coalition fight ISIL in Syria. All NATO allies are part of the coalition, and NATO support the efforts of the coalition. I also welcome, and of course Turkey, a NATO ally, is perhaps, or is the ally most affected by the turmoil, the violence, and the presence of ISIL in Iraq and Syria, Turkey bordering both countries. So Turkey is a NATO ally, and NATO has increased its military presence in Turkey to augment and to increase their capability to protect themselves against different kinds of attacks. I welcome closer cooperation between the different countries in the coalition fighting ISIL, and especially between the United States and Turkey, because they are key in the fight against ISIL, to NATO allies, and I think it is of great importance that they work even closer together in the fight against ISIL, also, of course, in Syria.
Thank you. One more question comes from the Defense Academy. Please.
National Defense Academy of Georgia, in Curtis Wizard. First of all, thanks for your visit and thanks for your support. My question is that, sir, how would you assess the importance of NATO Georgia substantial package in terms of development of defensibility of our country and growth of interoperability with NATO countries? Thank you.
The substantial package is a key tool in strengthening, modernizing the defense capabilities of Georgia. And we decided in Warsaw in July to further strengthen this tool. And of course, everything we do when it comes to provide education, training, advice to your armed forces, to your defense and security institutions, help you to get stronger, help you to be more modern, and help you to also become more interoperable, which is this word describing the ability to work together with other forces, both NATO forces, but also other forces from other NATO partner countries. This is good for Georgia, that we are exercising together, that our soldiers, your soldiers, our soldiers can work together, learn from each other, train together. So that's good for Georgia. It makes you a stronger, safer country, that you have modern, well-equipped, well-trained forces and good defense structures. But it's also good for NATO, because Georgia contributes to many NATO operations. So this is not only something we do because we would like to be kind to Georgia, but it's also because we understand that a strong Georgia, a well-trained armed forces of Georgia is also good for us. When you are together with us in Afghanistan, of course, that we are able to work together, that the Georgian soldiers are world top class, is good for our operation in Afghanistan. You participate in the fight against terrorism in the Mediterranean, in our operation there, and you also participate in the NATO response force. So this shows how the partnership is of mutual benefit, both for Georgia and NATO, and therefore we have decided to strengthen the comprehensive package, which is the main tool which we use to assist you in modernizing your forces.
Thank you, Secretary General. I would add only one to this point, that as a result of our joint efforts, as a result of very effective military-to-military cooperation, at the Wales Summit, Georgia was already officially acknowledged as one of the most interoperable partners, and we have already quite significantly benefited from this cooperation. We hope that NATO-Georgia substantial package will be additional benefit in this regard, which will prepare Georgia for membership as well. So we have one more question over there. Yeah.
Greetings and warm welcome. My name is Luca Loria. My question is, bearing in mind that Georgia is placed in a non-stable region, neighboring Iran, Syria, Ukraine, North Caucasus, to what extent Georgia is important for the alliance, and how do you eye the Georgian role in terms of securing peace in the region?
In one way, it goes without saying that Georgia is important for NATO, because Georgia is one of our most closest partners. And you are a partner which we really support. And again, we do that because we believe that the strong, stable, democratic Georgia is good for Georgia, but it's also good for the stability in the whole region, and therefore also good for NATO. We are, everything we do with our presence here is a sign of that. But just the fact that the North Atlantic Council, which very seldom travel together, the 28 nations traveling together, visiting another country, I think that happens once or twice a year. We are here again for the second time.
Exactly.
So that our presence here today with all the 28 and Montenegro is a strong expression of the importance we attach to Georgia and also the strong political support we provide to Georgia.
Thank you. We have just five minutes left for questions. I think that we can get 2 questions, but I would suggest to collect 2 questions in order to be in time. So, one over there. Yes? Please, lady.
There are only ladies.
Yeah. And one question over there.
Hello, thank you for interesting speech. I'm Tatsuli Khumto. I'm studying International Relations and Politics in Georgian University. And my question is, what do you think about Georgian political situation in Georgia? And does Georgia has to join in NATO? And what impact will they make with the relationship with Russia? Thank you.
Another question?
Khatia Gigolashvilis, Samtha Javakheti State University. First of all, thank you for your visiting and thank you for this meeting. How would you evaluate contribution of Georgia in strengthening international security and stability? Is the resolute support mission successful in Afghanistan? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. First, about the political situation in Georgia. Well, I think that I should not have any opinion about the political situation in Georgia, because that's for the people in Georgia to decide, and you have different parties. I met many of them in the parliament also this morning, and I'm in favor of democracy in Georgia. I'm in favor of strong democratic institutions in Georgia. I'm in favor of fair and free elections in Georgia, but I'm not going to have any opinion about what kind of parties are the best parties in Georgia. Because that's up to the people of Georgia to decide and to vote for different parties. And actually, I welcome the fact that there are different opinions. In all democratic societies, there are different opinions. And that's part of being a democratic society, is that people disagree. If people don't disagree, if there are not different opinions, then you should be really concerned. Because then there is no real democracy. So, yes, I have an opinion about the democratic system in Georgia. It has to be a democratic, strong, transparent, robust democracy. But how you, in a way, decide to use that democratic system, it's up to the people of Georgia to decide. And I look forward to the elections. And I expect them to meet the highest standards of democratic elections. Then you asked me about Georgia and NATO. Well, I think I answered. We have reaffirmed the Bucharest decision. I was actually in Bucharest back in 2008, when NATO decided that Georgia will become member. But to become member, you have to meet the standards. You have to continue on the path of modernizing, reforming. And let me also add that it may take time, it may require patience, but as I've stated and underlined many times, what you do while you are moving towards NATO benefits Georgia. So the reforms are also in your benefit regardless of membership. Then Russia. So we see a more assertive Russia. We see a Russia which has implemented a substantial military build-up, which has been willing to use military force against neighbors, Georgia and Ukraine. But at the same time, we underline strongly, and that was also a clear message from Warsaw, that we don't want a new Cold War. We don't want to isolate Russia. Russia is our biggest neighbor, and we have to manage our relationship with Russia, and we have to also avoid that when we have more military activities, more military presence along our borders, we have to avoid accidents, incidents, which can trigger really dangerous situations. And we just got reports from the Black Sea yesterday that we had a new incident with unsafe behavior of Russian planes flying very close to an American plane in international airspace. And these kind of incidents are dangerous because they can lead to really dangerous accidents, incidents, and we have to avoid that they spiral out of control. And that's one of the reasons why we are looking into how we can develop mechanisms for risk reductions, for transparency, for predictability in our relationship with Russia, to avoid that kind of incidents and accidents from happening, and if they happen, prevent them from spiraling out of control. Then what Georgia can do. I think I have already answered that question. So you can do a lot, and you're doing a lot, and the best thing you can do is to continue to become a modern, democratic, strong, resilient society. That's good for you, and it's good for the stability in the whole region.
Thank you, Secretary General. Unfortunately, I have to apologize for questions we could not get. We don't have any more time. But I would say that today's meeting really reminded me Secretary General Lord Robertson's informal meeting 16 years ago in Tbilisi. I was one among the students who were raising questions on possible prospects of improving cooperation with NATO and partnership with NATO. But the spirit of today's discussions and the topics raised by students really prove that since then, NATO-Georgia relations have improved significantly and really achieved very high standards. Because today, Georgia provides significant contribution to international peace and stability. Today, Georgia is already formally acknowledged as one of the most interoperable partners of the alliance. Georgia today for NATO is not only a valuable partner, but also an aspirant country, irreversibly standing on NATO membership track. And of course, it is worthless to mention how important is the Bucharest Summit decision, which says that Georgia will become a member of NATO. So with your permission, I would end this meeting on this very positive note. I would extend our gratitude once again for your very strong support and for your very interesting speech, remarks, and for completeness of your answers. Of course, I would ask everybody to join me in applauding Secretary General.
Thank you.
And the last but not least, I have the great pleasure to invite to the podium Director General of National Library of Georgia, who will be presenting the real masterpiece of Georgian literature, medieval epic poem, Night in the Panther's Skin.
Thank you so much. Very, very. Thank you. Thank you.